On Network Africa. 3 people killed after a helicopter crash in the southeastern region of DR Congo. Iranian President Ibrahim Raisi in Kenya to begin his 3-day Africa tour. Plus, Egypt to hold summit in Sudan with neighboring nations. Hello and welcome to the program. I'm Joke Rogers here in Lagos. We begin in the Democratic Republic of Congo, where 3 people have been killed in a helicopter crash in the southeastern region. Local authorities say the helicopter, owned by a mining corporation, crashed at noon on Monday as it was traveling from one mine to another. It was found in a ravine in the cobalt-rich province of Luabala. The victims are said to be subcontractors for the Boss Mining Company and includes a South African who was head of the G4S security company, his Polish deputy, and the French pilot. The mineral-rich country is the world's largest producer of cobalt, used to make lithium-ion batteries. Used to make batteries for electric vehicles. Congo is also Africa's top producer of copper, and lithium was recently found there. Iran's President Ibrahim Raisi is in Nairobi, Kenya for the start of a 3-day Africa tour. President Raisi was welcomed by Kenyan President William Ruto at the presidential palace a day later than initially planned. The visit on the continent is the first by an Iranian leader in over 8 years, as Tehran seeks to ease its diplomatic isolation by finding new international allies. Mr. Raisi will continue the tour in Uganda and Zimbabwe, where he will meet his counterparts, Yoweri Museveni and Emerson Mnangagwa. According to the spokesperson for the country's foreign affairs minister, Iran's visit is a starting point for the new economic and trade ties between Tehran and African countries. Well, the Iranian president's visit is not stopping some citizens from taking to the streets to protest despite the ban on marching. Opposition protesters have pressed ahead with planned demonstrations, defying a warning from police who called the protest illegal. But officers sprayed tear gas at protesters in various towns. As the police chief says, necessary measures must be taken to disperse them. Protests organizers are calling for the scrapping of a new law which doubles fuel taxes and imposes a 1.5% housing levy on employees. For now, it has been suspended by the High Court in Nairobi because of constitutional concerns. But the government says the measure is necessary to fix debt repayment issues and create job opportunities for unemployed youth. Bus and taxi drivers have joined the demonstrations, expressing concerns about rising fuel costs. Many businesses remain closed and transportation has come to a standstill. Let's get more of this. Kenyan journalist Cyrus Ombati joins us now for more discussion. Hello, Cyrus. Good to see you today.
Yes, how are you?
I'm good. So let's begin with the Iranian president's visits. It's a very unusual one. Of what significance is this to Kenya?
Well, it's the first one, the last, let's say, more than 8 years since we had such a visit in Kenya. It comes at a time when there is a bad blood between Iran and the West countries, Italian countries. I remember his visit was actually delayed from yesterday up to today because there were issues to do with the MOU which we were supposed to sign. Kenya was keen to having some deals, including oil deals, which we are told some Western countries were against the signing of the same. So that caused the delay of him coming yesterday.
And how we understand that, a number of deals were signed. Do tell us more about that.
According to a statement which was issued by Status in Nairobi, after they signed the deal, they say they agreed on issues to do with ICT. Of course, the deals on the particulars of the ICT issues are not there. This will be to do with the livestock export from Kenya to Iran, agriculture, technology, all those. The issues, main issues are, export of tea from Kenya, coffee to Iran. So those are the main issues that are going to benefit Kenya, because you see Kenya is a big producer of coffee and tea. Even animal, cows and sheep, goat, they produce a number of them. So the agreement which they met today was to ensure that there is an increase of export of the same to Iran from the previous trade imbalance, which Mr. Ruto said has been there between Kenya and Iran.
And, the Iranian president's visit to Africa is expected to ease some sort of diplomatic isolation. So how is this particular visit expected to impact the Iran-Kenya relationship?
Well, the relation between Kenya and Iran has been there, but it has been so cold or low to say because of the Western kind of dominance. We know that from now going forward, unless the Western countries clear this trip to Kenya and to Uganda and Zimbabwe, there might be problems between Kenya and the Western countries. But given the way the government pushed for the trip to go on, we believe that there was a form of clearance from the parties involved. If I say parties involved, you understand that the Western countries.
And finally, talking about the banned tax protest, many still came out, defying police order. The people aren't backing down. Is this the case?
They are not backing down today, because today it was bad all over the country, and we understand up to 6 people have been killed by police today. Even as we are speaking now, there are clashes in parts of Nairobi where police and protesters are clashing. The people are kind of protesting against the high taxes which were passed the other day, even if they have been suspended by the High Court. Some of them, especially the fuel taxes, are still being implemented with impunity. So that's why many people came out from all over the country to hear Mr. Odinga's call for the protest here and there. We hope there will be a kind of a compromise and talk to agree on the way forward.
Right, Cyrus, thank you for your time today.
Thank you so much.
In the meantime, President William Ruto is asking African nations to use local currencies for intracontinental trade. Analysts say the currencies of many African countries continue to weaken against the US dollar, and the Kenyan government is taking various measures to reduce the dependence on the US dollar. Many African countries rely heavily on imported food and crude oil, and the U.S. interest rate hikes have boosted the dollar, directly pushing up the cost of importing these necessities. Many African countries, including Kenya, have recently faced difficulties such as a shortage of U.S. dollars, currency depreciation, and high inflation.
We used to do other things like after work we can go and have a relax somewhere, enjoy with friends, but nowadays you cannot.
I think economy has gone so high, like most of people find it very difficult.
In that there are different countries and regions that are dropping the dollar for different currencies, and especially the BRICS, that is Brazil, Russia, India, China, and South Africa countries, a group that is actually increasing in number.
Elsewhere, India's Health Minister Mansukh Mandaviya says regulators have taken action against more than 100 pharmaceutical companies in response to deaths linked to cough syrups last year. Last year, Indian-made cough medicine was blamed for dozens of child deaths in the Gambia and Uzbekistan. After inspections of manufacturing plants, the minister said production had been stopped at 31 companies with product licenses at a further 50 firms cancelled or suspended. The Indian government has previously said it will make tests mandatory for cough syrups before they were exported. India sees itself as the pharmacy of the world, with exports of medicines last year worth more than $24 billion. Angola and the Democratic Republic of Congo have announced a joint project to rehabilitate the railway line linking the Congolese mining regions to the Atlantic Ocean. Earlier this week, Luanda and Kinshasa granted a group of investors a 30-year concession to operate the line linking the Angolan port of Lobito to Kolwezi in the heart of the DRC's mineral-producing region. The 1,700-kilometer railway line was built 100 years ago by British investors. The $555 million project, partly financed by the U.S., is expected to develop exports of copper and other products, boost regional trade, and strengthen Angola's ties with Western countries. The DRC is the world's leading producer of cobalt and Africa's leading producer of copper, two minerals used in the manufacture of solar panels and electric cars. Nobel Peace Prize winner and girl child education activist Malala Yousafzai has challenged political leaders to work towards increasing access to girl child education in order to give them the opportunity to live their dreams. Ms. Yousafzai said this when she and members of her entourage paid a courtesy visit on the governor of Borno State in northeast Nigeria, Professor Babagana Zulum, at the State House, Maiduguri, the state capital. According to her, she's happy to propagate girl-child education in her second visit to Maiduguri.
I have been traveling to different countries around the world because I want to bring attention to the stories of other girls. People heard my story. They realized how important it is for one girl to have access to education. So I want to remind the world, to think about all those hundreds of millions of girls who do not have access to education. My story is not unique. There are so many girls out there who have the potential to go and change their communities. We need to ensure that they get the chance to get their education and follow their dreams.
But while welcoming the girl-child activist to the state, Governor Zulum appreciated her for her efforts in promotion of girl-child education, adding that the state is doing all it can to provide access to education for girls in spite of the insurgency.
Within the last 4 years, Borno State governors enrolled nothing fewer than 500,000 girls into our own public schools. We are also improving infrastructure, recruiting more teachers, improving quality of education, and engaging in social reorientation programs that improve the mindsets of parents. The Boko Haram insurgents have destroyed about 1,000 classrooms in Borno State. The worst is that we harvested a total number of about 53,000 widows and about 50,000 widows, orphans, most of whom are girls.
And still ahead on the program. Senegal's lone photo developer fights to revive photography. Welcome back now to our coverage of the crisis in Sudan, where there are reports that dozens of people have died in a random shelling of a market in the city of Omdurman. On Saturday, 45 people were killed in an airstrike in the city, which lies across the River Nile from the capital, Khartoum. Fighting between the Sudanese army and the paramilitary rapid support forces has been ongoing for 3 months now. More than 3,000 people have been killed. In the meantime, Egypt is preparing to host a summit of Sudan's neighbors on Thursday, July 13, to discuss ways to end a 12-week conflict between rival Sudanese military factions that has triggered a major humanitarian crisis in the region. Diplomatic efforts to halt fighting between Sudan's army and the rapid support forces have so far proved ineffective, with competing initiatives creating confusion over how the warring parties might be brought to negotiate. Neither Egypt, seen as the Sudanese army's most important foreign ally, nor the United Arab Emirates, which has had close ties to the RSF, have played a prominent public role. The two countries were also not involved in talks in Jeddah led by the United States and Saudi Arabia that adjourned last month after failing to secure a lasting ceasefire. Sudan's two largest neighbors, Egypt and Ethiopia, have been at odds in recent years over the construction of a huge hydroelectric dam on Ethiopia's Blue Nile, close to the border with Sudan. Let's get more on this. The VOA's correspondent, Edward Iranian, joins us for more discussions. He joins us from Cairo in Egypt. Good to see you today, Edward.
Thank you, Joker.
Right, so what are we to expect from this Sudan summit that Egypt is hosting?
Well, as a journalist in the Middle East for 37 years, I generally expect very little, and when something actually turns up, I'm pleased. But that being said, I think what we've seen from the Saudi U.S.-sponsored talks in Jeddah over Sudan, that nothing really materialized because the parties were not observing the ceasefire. I mean, that's easy to say. Egypt is saying that they're going to put in mechanisms to make the ceasefire work. I'm not sure how easy that is to do, but that's what they're saying. If it works, it would be a good thing, but I'm not going to hold my breath at this point.
Right, so diplomatic efforts to halt the fighting, as I just reported, between Sudan's army and the rapid support forces have so far proved ineffective. For example, talks in Jeddah, led by the United States and Saudi Arabia, failed to secure a lasting ceasefire. What is Egypt looking to do differently?
Well, Egypt has ties with more of the parties on the ground involved in this conflict than any of the other countries, because Egypt has ties with General Haftar in Libya, who works with the rapid support forces. Egypt has very close ties with the Sudanese army, and Egypt has fairly good ties with most of the regional countries. Perhaps you could say not with Ethiopia. But then again, the countries that are most important are the ones that are borderline with Sudan, which are Chad, Libya, Egypt. So if they can get a mechanism of those countries together to enforce a ceasefire, that would be stronger than anything Saudi Arabia or the U.S. could have put together from Jeddah, just on the word of the army and the rapid support forces. We are hearing sour noises from the Sudanese foreign ministry, because apparently the Ethiopian and Kenyan presidents said something that they didn't like. So, I mean, there are a lot of sour noises going on, and I mean, you could realistically not be very optimistic about what's going to happen, but Egypt is saying that they have mechanisms that they're going to put in place to make a ceasefire work.
Right. So how much of an involvement, are these neighbors that you speak about getting, seeing that they also are the most impacted, because any refugee from Sudan will be going into those neighboring countries, and they have to open their borders up at some time. So how much of an involvement, are they getting in this summit going on in Egypt?
Well, up to this point, we're expecting everyone to participate, at least the major players, and the ones that are most impacted, of course, are Egypt, with 250,000, give or take, according to various estimates, refugees that have come in the last few months since this conflict started. Apparently, South Sudan is also very badly affected. Chad is very badly affected. And these parties are going to be participating. Chad, if they close their border, I guess that would stop the rapid support forces from bringing any reinforcements in. If South Sudan closed its border, I mean, arguably they could put pressure on both sides, well, mostly on the army. And Egypt is a major backer of the Sudanese army, so they could put pressure on the Sudanese army. So we have a number of pressure points that could be used. Will they be used? Will they be effective? Those are good questions. I really don't have the answers. I'm just speculating myself.
Right, so I can understand the urgency that Egypt has to host this, these refugees. You have said that, hundreds of thousands of refugees have crossed into Egypt. So how is Egypt, coping with the numbers that are crossing its borders?
Well, it's putting additional pressure on the country and the economy at a time when there's already a lot of stress. And you could argue that a lot of foreign countries and foreign power brokers would like to see that happen. Over the last few years, you can see that they've been trying to put pressure on Egypt in various respects. And, it's repeated. It's not just on a one case basis. So you could very easily say they would like to see Egypt in a pickle, and they are creating a pickle. And this conflict in Sudan, I think, was totally unnecessary. And I personally believe, although that's not, I couldn't prove it, and somebody could argue with me that it didn't need to happen, that outside power brokers caused it to happen. But anyway, I can't prove that. But I think there is a sense, at least here in Egypt, that people would like to put pressure on the country, and they'd like to try to diffuse that pressure.
Right. Edward, again, thank you for your time today.
My pleasure, Joko.
Right, UN humanitarians in Chad are expressing concern at the surging numbers of people fleeing conflict in Sudan, as we've just said, and confirmed that they have scaled up the organization's response to help the wounded and the malnourished. WFP's country director in Chad, Pierre Honorat, says in the last week alone, some 20,000 people fled from Sudan's Darfur region to Adre, a small Chadian town near the border. Many refugees arrived injured with harrowing stories of violence they have endured. The UN agency says its relief efforts along the Chad-Sudan border have become increasingly challenged due to a lack of resources. Since the start of the conflict in April, WFP has so far delivered food and nutrition assistance to nearly 152,000 new arrivals and to the host communities on the Chad-Sudan border.
Some 276,000 people now may have already crossed the border, hosted by Chad, where we already have many food insecurity, with already some 600,000 refugees pre-war that we were already almost impossible to assist due to the funding. On the malnutrition, yes, children are dying. I don't have the exact figure, but every week, children are dying at the nutrition centers. This is a reality. I've rarely seen such an important crisis with so little funding. I was also at the border, just at the cross border on the bridge, what's left as a bridge. It's a constant flow, and the ones that are coming now are in much worse situation than those who arrived in the first days. We can see that they have suffered, many lost family members, and you don't even dare asking, where are the men? The answers from others is often that they were killed. So you see many women, many children, it's just unbelievable. Children are laughing, playing. You can feel they have found peace, relief. This is, I think, the first thing they get is really peace when they are there. So those camps are extremely calm. It's amazing. There is not much noise. Some of their animals, it's then when you get closer to the family, to see you see la détresse des gens. You see that they are in need. You see they have nothing.
Away from Sudan, the lawyer for a senior opposition politician in Senegal says his client has been charged over comments he made about President Macky Sall. Birame Souleye Diop was arrested following remarks he made suggesting the president might roll back on his comment not to stand for a third term in next year's election. President Sall ruled out running for re-election earlier this month following widespread protests. Mr. Diop is an MP with the PASTEF party, whose leader, Ousmane Sonko, was handed a 2-year prison sentence in June, making him ineligible to stand in the presidential election due in February next year. and limited access to film and darkroom spaces have hindered African photographers' ability to participate in film's global resurgence, despite the craft having played a significant role in the region's post-colonial artistic history. Amy Sarr is part of a growing resurgence of analog photography enthusiasts in Senegal with the aim of rekindling the country's love for the craft through film sales and hands-on development workshops.
From a concrete jetty on Dakar's sun-baked coastline, Senegalese photographer Amy Sarr clicks the shutter of her vintage Pentax camera, capturing the light of the horizon on color film purchased from the country's only developer.
Pour l'instant, j'ai que fait des photos argentiques de couleur. Ça me fait un peu peur de shooter le noir et blanc parce que
Dakar looks great with certain colored films because they really bring out the warm, vibrant colors. Film can be really great in Africa because in general, it's sunny and very colorful.
Vraiment ressortir les couleurs chaudes, les couleurs vibrantes. Et c'est pour ça que ça très
Founded 2 years ago out of owner Kevin Ober's apartment and the last studio of its kind, Lucelle, in the capital's Wakam neighborhood, nurtured Sarr. After decades of dwindling interest, the market for film cameras and equipment is expected to grow nearly 4% through 2029, according to a study published by Precision Reports in May. Lucelle's mission is not just to develop film, but to educate photographers about the origins of the medium and show that understanding the analog process can enhance their digital expertise.
When they see the image they shot themselves appearing for the first time, it is always a treat. It teaches us a lot about the image, the way they look at it, and the way to manage it.
Ober hopes to expand Lucelle into a larger space to house more workshops, exhibits, and even an in-house gallery. In the meantime, local photographers like Eva Diallo are already showing works developed there at some of Dakar's most prestigious art houses.
And that's our show today. Thank you for watching. I'm Joker Rogers.